The police station was as busy as ever. The usual blend of ringing phones, hurried footsteps, and the occasional burst of laughter from officers gathered around desks. Officer Brandon Hayes leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee, a smirk permanently etched onto his face. He liked being in charge, or at least feeling like he was. He had been on the force long enough to know how things worked, and more importantly, how to keep people in their place. That was why, when the woman walked in, he barely acknowledged her. She wasn't in uniform, didn't look like she belonged there. Probably another civilian with a complaint, a waste of his time. She approached the desk with confidence, her posture straight, her gaze steady. "I need to report a theft." Hayes glanced up lazily. "Yeah? What did you lose? A purse? A phone?" He let out a short chuckle. "Or maybe you just need some attention." The other officers nearby either laughed along or looked away, pretending to be busy. The woman didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't even look offended. She simply repeated, "I'd like to file a report." Hayes rolled his eyes, setting his coffee cup down with an exaggerated sigh. "You people always got something to complain about," he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Then, before she could say anything else, he picked up the coffee cup again, and without a second thought, threw the steaming liquid right into her face. The room went dead silent. The coffee splashed across her skin, staining her shirt, the steam still rising from the fabric. But she didn't gasp, didn't recoil. Instead, she reached into her pocket, pulled out a napkin, and wiped her face slowly, her expression unreadable. A few officers looked uncomfortable. Young Officer Ethan Cole took a hesitant step forward, but quickly stopped when Hayes shot him a glare. Hayes chuckled, shaking his head. "Consider that a little lesson," he said, picking up a new file from his desk. "Next time, show some respect." The woman held his gaze for a long moment. Then, very calmly, she nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for showing me exactly how things work around here." And with that, she turned and walked out. An hour later, the station intercom crackled to life. "All officers report to the briefing room immediately." Hayes groaned. "What now?" he muttered as he strolled toward the meeting area. "Bet it's some diversity training nonsense." The officers gathered, some curious, others annoyed. Hayes slouched into a seat at the back, nudging Cole. "I swear, if this is another speech about being sensitive—" Then she walked in, not in casual clothes this time, in a uniform, a police uniform, and on her chest, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, was a badge that outranked every single person in the room. She stepped forward, hands behind her back, her expression as calm as ever. The silence stretched painfully. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice carrying through the room with effortless authority. "I know many of you have had an eventful morning, so let me introduce myself." No one moved. No one breathed. "I am Maya Carter, and as of today, I am your new chief of police." The weight of her words crushed the room. A few officers exchanged glances. A few turned pale, but Hayes looked like he had just been punched in the stomach. His mouth opened, then closed again. "No way," he muttered under his breath. Maya's gaze landed on him. "Oh yes, Officer Hayes. I'm very much looking forward to working with you." A cold sweat broke out at the back of his neck. The silence was deafening. She stepped forward, placing a thick file on the desk. "For the past few weeks, I've been observing this station, reviewing reports, speaking to officers, studying behavior. I wanted to see for myself who upholds the values of this department and who abuses them." Hayes shifted in his chair, his confidence cracking. She turned to young Officer Cole. "Officer Cole, would you kindly share what happened earlier today?" Cole hesitated. He could feel Hayes's glare burning into him. But then, for the first time, Cole didn't back down. He stood up, cleared his throat, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. I saw Officer Hayes assault a civilian by throwing hot coffee at her face. Murmurs filled the room. Hayes's hands curled into fists. You little... Maya raised her hand, cutting him off effortlessly. That civilian was your superior officer, Officer Hayes, and your actions, she slid a document toward him, are grounds for immediate suspension. Effective now. The murmurs turned to full-on whispers. Hayes shot to his feet. You can't do this to me. I have connections. I take it up with internal affairs, Maya said coolly. Then, turning to two officers standing near the door, she added, escort him out. The two men hesitated for only a second before stepping forward. Hayes' protests turned to rage. This isn't over. You don't belong here. Maya took a slow step closer. Then, in a voice so quiet that only he could hear, she said, and yet, Officer Hayes, I'm still here. You're not. The fight left his face. The weight of the moment crashed down on him. He had lost. For once in his life, Brandon Hayes had no power. The two officers grabbed his arms and led him out of the room. His protests faded down the hall, the sound of his voice disappearing as the door shut behind him. Maya turned back to the remaining officers, scanning their faces. Some looked relieved, some looked uneasy. Let this be a lesson, she said, her voice steady. No one is above the law, and this department will be a place of respect, integrity, and justice, not a playground for bullies. She let her words settle. Then, with one last glance at the room, she walked out, leaving behind a station forever changed.